Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Mayor and Board of Trustees for the Village of Burr Ridge. It is April 9th. Our first order of business is our Pledge of Allegiance, and tonight we're going to be led by an Elm School student named Zed Lilioya. And that makes two people I know with first name Zed. So that's a very, very unique name. Now Zed is according to his mom, his favorite subjects are writing and math. His extracurricular activities at Elm are choir and orchestra, in which Zed plays the cello. His favorite pastimes outside of school are piano, swimming, jumping, and jumping on the trampoline and playing games outside with his 6 siblings. Other interesting things about Zed, though he was born in Chicago, his family came to America from Australia 13 years ago, and Zed is both an American and Australian student. They still visit Australia on a regular basis, and Zed was there for 3 weeks over Christmas. They have 2 dogs, one huge black one called Mose or Maz, and one tiny white one called Tazzy. And they look forward to being here, and we're glad to have them here tonight. So Zed, if you'd like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Zed. That has to be a first two of a dual citizenship of America and Australia. And one of the greatest patriots I know also came from Australia. So thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Karen, may I have roll call, please?
Trustee Francis.
Here.
Trustee Model.
Here.
Trustee Cabeza.
Here.
Trustee Martell. Here. Trustee Snyder.
Here.
Trustee Schiappa.
Here.
Mayor Straub.
Here. As many of you already know, and some of you may not, who are watching here tonight, tonight we are remembering a former village trustee, Dolores Cizik. She was between the Planning Commission and the board. She served our village for 16 years, and we were informed just at the last week that she passed away the previous week, and just recently got just this afternoon, I guess, got some information regarding the obituary for it. So, but Dolores was also a resident of 50 years. And it's only fitting, as we all do for anyone that served the village for as she has, in her honor and the respect for her memory, to have a moment of silence. Well, thank you, and our thoughts and prayers are with her son and our friends, who I'm sure will remember her for many, many years. So, our next order of business is the residents' comments. Are there any residents who would like to address the board this time?
What is the proper time to talk about the video gambling?
Oh, you're welcome to address it when the subject comes up. We'll be asking for the public comment portion. Probably the best time. You can do it now also, but it might be repetitive, so it might be more effective then.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go through the consent agenda, otherwise known as the omnibus vote. All items listed with an asterisk are considered routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion regarding these items. Under minutes, we have approval of regular board meeting of March 12th, 2018. Number says B, approval of budget workshop of March 22nd, 2018. C, approval of regular board meeting of March 26th, 2018. D, receive and file draft plan commission meeting of April 2nd, 2018. Under ordinances, we have 6D, which is approval of an ordinance amending section XB7 of the Burr Ridge zoning ordinance relative to outdoor overnight parking of commercial vehicles and manufacturing districts, Z03 2018, text amendment overnight outdoor parking. Under E, you have approval of ordinance authorizing the disposal of personal property owned by the Village of Burr Ridge, computer electronic equipment. Under considerations, We have 8E, acknowledgement of withdrawal of Plan Commission petitions Z06 2018, Z10 to Z10 2018 for the 16W020 79th Street Lion truck sales. We have the approval F, approval of proclamation designating April 22nd to 28th, 2018 as Arbor Day Week. G, approval of recommendation to award contract for water main valve installations in Woodview Estates to Midwest Chlorinating and Testing Incorporated of Bartlett, Illinois, in the amount not to exceed $10,350. H, approval of recommendation to award contract for engineering services of the County Line Road storm sewer outfall at Deer Path Trail to Robinson Engineering Limited of Itasca in the amount of $44,540. I, approval of recommendation to award contract for replacement of the Village Hall chiller to Dynamic Heating and Piping Company of Crestwood, Illinois, in the amount of $96,591. J, approval of recommendation to award the contract for fiscal year 2018-2019 ComEd transmission line tree trimming to Commonwealth Edison in the amount of $19,670. Spending a lot of money this week. Okay, K, approval of recommendation to award the contract for fiscal year 2018 and 2019 streetlight maintenance to Rags Electric and prices established by Rags time and materials cost proposal. L, approval of recommendation to approve fiscal year 18-19 pay plan and salary increases for non-union employees. M, receive and file resignation letter from Village Treasurer Noel Hastelis, effective April 9th, 2018. N, accept resignation of Plan Commissioner Greg Scott, effective April 9th, 2018.
Remove.
O, approval of a vendor list in the amount of $28,537.70 for all funds, plus $200,589.77 for payroll, for a grand total of $229,127.47, which includes no special expenditures. May I have a motion to approve the following items on the consent agenda? That would be 5A, B, C, and D, 6, D and E, 8, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, and O. Motion?
So moved.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Beza?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
6-0.
Now I'd like to open up the public hearing for fiscal year 2018-19.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. This is our annual public hearing for adoption of the upcoming fiscal year budget. And as we've done in the past, I'd like to just read the President's budget message for the record for the public hearing. The Village Board reviewed staff's proposed draft budget in detail at the March 22nd, 2018 budget workshop, and as a result, a few changes have been made to the proposed budget. The budget is now in final form. The fiscal year 2018-19 expenditure budget, including transfers, amounts to $19,416,490. In the general fund, the fiscal year 18-19 general fund budget reflects a surplus of $25,010 after $215,000 was transferred to the capital projects fund. This surplus is due in large part to increases in building permit fees and sales tax growth. The transfer to the equipment replacement fund is also being made at the end of the current fiscal year of $175,000. In terms of revenues in the general fund, the FY 18-19 general fund revenues are estimated at $8,871,650, which is 2% more than the fiscal year 17-18 budget of $8.6 million. In terms of expenditures, the fiscal year 18-19 expenditures budget is $8,846,640, which is 2.8% more than the fiscal year 17-18 expenditure budget of $8.6 million. Under special revenues funds, these are restricted funds that can only be spent on legally prescribed expenditures. The MFT fund, the motor fuel tax fund budget, includes a transfer of $285,000 to the capital improvements fund to help fund the 2018 road program. That is the only expenditure that is permitted by law for motor fuel tax funds. This expenditure represents the available funds expected from the Illinois Department of Transportation. Under the Hotel Motel Tax Fund, again, another restricted special revenue fund. This year, the hotel motel tax will generate $709,955. The majority of this revenue will be used to fund the marketing plan for Burr Ridge Hotels, pay for gateway landscape maintenance, and village-sponsored programs and events. Again, that fund can only be used for expenditures that encourage overnight stays in the village. Under our capital projects funds, the capital improvement fund is a non-enterprise fund capital improvements. All non-enterprise fund capital improvements are expended out of the capital projects fund. With this in mind, revenues will come from grants and transfers from other funds and resources. The total fiscal year 18-19 capital improvements budget is $1,086,345, which includes the cost of the 2018 road program in the amount of $607,490. Another capital projects fund is the Sidewalk Pathway Improvement Fund. The 18-19 Sidewalk Pathway budget includes expenditures in the amount of $76,825 for projects and annual maintenance. It is expected that the Sidewalk Pathway Fund will be depleted by the end of fiscal year 18-19, and all future sidewalk projects will have to compete with the road program for limited capital improvement funding. Another capital projects fund is the Capital Equipment Replacement Fund. The Equipment Replacement Fund was established to account for larger vehicle and equipment replacements for the village. This fund currently has a beginning fund reserves of $860,438, and it is anticipated that $464,900 of that will be spent in fiscal year 18-19. As indicated above, a transfer of funds from the general fund to the equipment replacement fund in the amount of $175,000 will be made prior to the end of the current fiscal year. The final capital projects fund is the Stormwater Management Fund. The Stormwater Management Fund was established to better account for stormwater-related revenues and expenditures. The fund currently has a beginning balance of $108,818, and it is anticipated that it will have an ending fund balance at the end of fiscal year 18-19 of $568,800. $133,800 in projects is budgeted for fiscal year 18-19. The debt service fund includes two debt issues: County Line Road, Burr Ridge Parkway Gateway landscaping improvements, which will be paid off in full at the end of fiscal year 18-19, and the police facility bonds, which has been refinanced until fiscal year 2022 and 23. The water fund is an enterprise fund, which is in the fiscal year 18-19 water fund budget shows a deficit in the amount of $78,550. Projected revenues for the water fund in 18-19 are $5,693,410, or 7.9% more than fiscal year 17-18 budget. The fiscal year 17-18 expenditure budget amounts to $5,771,960, which is 13.4% more than the FY 17-18 budget. A 5-year rate adjustment plan has been put in place to provide for future capital projects and bring reserves back up in this fund, and those ordinances are on your agenda tonight. The sewer fund was established to maintain the sewer system, the sanitary sewer system in the Cook County portion of the village. The rest of the village is served by DuPage and Flag Creek sanitary districts. Revenues in the amount of $400,610 are projected for fiscal year 18-19 in the sewer fund, with expenditures in the amount of $320,895. Five-year rate adjustment plan has also been put in place for this fund. Excuse me. The Information Technology Fund accounts for all costs related to the delivery of information services to the internal departments of the village. The fiscal year 18-19 revenues are estimated at $289,660, which is comprised primarily of transfers from the general, water, and sewer funds. Expenditures in fiscal year 18-19 in the Information Technology Fund are estimated at $314,490. And finally, the Police Pension Fund. The fiscal year 18-19 Police Pension Fund revenues are estimated at $1,547,375, of which $748,665 is projected to be collected from property taxes. This amount equals the village's required contribution under the state law. Total pension disability payments equal $1,208,350. Pension disability payments include 5 police officers on permanent disability, 14 retirees, and 1 survivor spouse. Total police pension fund expenditures equal $1,274,940. Details of each budget are included in the budget document and are also will be available on our website. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those now. And Jerry Sapp, our finance director, is also in attendance, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Good job. Thank you, Greg. Doug's gonna go, just got back to work yesterday after being out for a week from being ill, and bad cold, and bad flu, and I'm glad that you're back. I try to keep your comments to a minimum for you.
Thank you.
Has anyone like to address the board at this time? Anyone from the public?
I just want to make the comment that the staff, as usual, puts together a very accurate and detailed budget, of which we've had several meetings with them, and they have taken our comments and suggestions and have come up with this budget. And as the administrator said, it's online, so if anybody has any questions on the details of the budget, they'll have no trouble checking it out. It looks pretty thick right now, but if there's anything that anybody would like to check out, it'll be online, effective tomorrow?
Yes.
So that's all I wanted to say.
And a reminder too that we've been, this budget isn't just kind of just brought up today. We've been looking at it for months, and so it's not just a quick decision. It's something we've been looking at for a number of months. So, if there is no other discussion, may I have a motion to close the public hearing for the budget session?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Any nays? Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Now we'll move on to under ordinances. 6A, consideration of an ordinance adopting the budget for all corporate purposes of the village of Burr Ridge, DuPage, and Cook Counties, Illinois, in lieu of the appropriation ordinance for the fiscal year commencing on the first day of May 2018 and ending on the 30th day of April 2019.
The budget was just summarized in the public hearing. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just to confirm, this is a balanced budget, as they have been for many years, correct?
Well, it depends on how you define balance, but yes, I would call it a structurally sound budget. We always set aside money during certain years to pay for future expenses. When those future expenses come due, you will see that in certain funds, there's more expenditures than there are revenues. But I would describe it as a structurally sound budget in the sense that We're spending money that's been earmarked and raised in previous years during this year, as well as current revenues for current expenditures.
Thank you.
I would disagree that it's a balanced budget. Our expenditures are exceeding our revenues, and we're drawing our reserves down by over $300,000 to balance the budget. The budget is fully funded, yes, because we're drawing down our reserves, but it is not balanced. Our expenditures exceed our revenues. And I gave Doug five different sources that define balanced budget. And they all say expenditures have to equal revenues for it to be balanced. In this case, our expenditures exceeded by $300,000. It is not balanced. It is funded, fully funded, by drawing our reserves down. Thank you.
Anybody else? May I have a motion to approve 6A?
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, roll call, please.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Scalpa?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
Trustee Mato?
No.
5,
Balanced budget.
5-1.
Moving on to 6B, consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 58, Section 5801 of the Burr Ridge Municipal Code to amend rates for water consumption.
Yes, this was discussed at your last meeting, and the board directed staff to prepare these ordinances, both in 6B for water rates and 6C for wastewater service rates. And they have been prepared as directed. I would note that we just found out today that our Bedford Park, the village of Bedford Park, who we buy water from, has announced an increase of 2.06% effective June 1st of this year. They have the right to raise their rates once a year that they charge us for our purchase of water. These ordinances that are in front of you do not reflect that increase, so the 10% increase just basically became an 8% increase in terms of what the additional revenues the village will see.
Okay. Any discussion? It's also something we've been going over for quite a while.
Excuse me, Mayor. I was under the impression that even if Bedford Park came back and raised it, we're gonna put the 2% or whatever that in addition to the 10% for this year. We had that discussion.
I remember that discussion, and we weren't, at the staff level, we weren't clear on whether that was the direction of the committee or the board. So I did not incorporate that into the ordinance, but the reason I brought it up here tonight is to give you the opportunity to do that if you want to add that
The
2%.
next question is, how often does Bedford Park, do they raise it every year?
Once a year, they have the opportunity to
Have they
raise the
risen
rate.
it every year? That's my question then.
Pardon?
Have they risen it every year?
Dave?
Yeah, they raise it when their source raises it, of course, the city of Chicago. They raised it in 2017 last, and then 2 years before that was the last raise in 2015. So it's not every year, but it's only when Chicago does theirs, passed along.
Question. Do we know, they've had several raises, some of them were induced by other reasons, but do you know if we're still getting the lowest rate of all their customers? Because that was the original agreement.
I can't say with certainty we're getting the lowest rate. That's
I think with all these increases, I think we ought to check on what they're charging other major customers like corn products and et cetera.
Any questions or discussions?
So the ordinance as it's written, we're absorbing that 2%.
Right. The ordinance as written has a 10% increase effective May 1st. So effective June 1st, that 10%, our, you know, will go down to essentially 8%. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the rates to consumers will still go up 10%, but
So if we go through with this, and so the next year in 2019, if they get another, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So if next year it comes in 2% again, so instead of receiving 8, we're only gonna get 6.
well, if we make no other changes, right, but
Make no other changes.
we'll be back to you a year from now saying, you know, confirming what the rates are. If we get a notice from Bedford Park that they're raising the rates, we'll let you know that. If we don't get a notice, we'll let you know that. So you'll have an opportunity to revisit it a year from now if you want to. We don't know whether they'll raise our rates or not.
Then my thought on this would be is to keep the 10% for the village, and increase the additional 2% to go to the 12 like we originally put through and directed staff for the meeting.
Do you have an idea of how much it will affect per household, or the 12% increase? What the impact would be?
Jerry, I think we did that analysis of what the 10% increase means per the typical 10,000 square foot or 10,000 gallon household.
Yes, we did. I can't recall it off the top.
Could you step to the microphone, please? I can't hear you.
Pardon?
Could you step to the microphone, please? I can't hear you.
Yes, we did, but I don't have that information at me here at this time.
I think we'd provided that in the
So,
packet.
yeah, in the water committee packet, we provided it too.
I recall that it was $5 a month for the average customer. So if we were to go from
That's about
10% increase to 12%, that's another 20% on top of that. It's another $1.
$6.
$6 to the average consumer, and a residential consumer in the village, instead of $5.
Any other questions or changes or motions?
Now, basically, B includes a 10% raise, is that right, on the water?
The ordinance as drafted raises the rates 10% on May 1st. It makes no other changes. And if you wanted to compensate for that additional 2%, you would change that to a 12% increase effective May 1st or June 1st, whatever your preference.
Then I'd like to make a motion, having the full 10% plus the increase of the 2%, which we had a discussion in the meeting. We knew this was gonna we're gonna come through it. That's the way we specifically laid it out, I thought. So that would be my motion to go forward.
Second.
Excuse me, you have a mic problem. We cannot hear anybody else.
Actually, we might put the microphone more
That
closely
side,
in front of.
you can't hear that side, correct? Yeah. This side, yeah. I'm having the same problem.
More in front of you. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
No.
I'll speak louder. I'll make a motion that we go with the 12%, 10% plus the 2% as we had discussed in the previous meeting.
Second. Can you hear me? Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on at the board level? I noticed there was one resident that raised their hand. They wanted to say something. Yes. If you'd like to come to the microphone, please.
Ellen Raymond, 11538 Ridgewood. So I'm just wanting to mention in the summer, the calculation of 10% would not, $5 would not nearly be my water bill at 10% when we have the dry season and the spring, everybody in my neighborhood waters the yard, you know, on the days we're permitted. I would guess it would be more like a $25 increase because my water bills are very high. Of course, that's 2 months, so maybe 30 in 2 months, 15 a month. So I hope for the residents' sake, you don't increase it from 10 to 12 because really $5 is an underestimate of the 10% increase.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alice?
Alice Crampett, 7515 Drew. So I was confused because there was discussion about 8% and then stepping it up. So that's completely out the window. What were we talking about that, or is that 8% per year? I thought we had, and I know Mr. Paveza was talking about also stepping it up. We were talking that maybe over time, 12% to me is a lot. And I'm assuming you wouldn't raise the sewer tax to go with that, or the sewer fee. That's just the water that you're talking about, right?
We're just, right, the
Okay.
Water Committee recommendation was, and what was discussed at the last board meeting was a 10% increase effective May 1st, then an 8% increase for 4 years, each of 4 years after that. There was also discussion about the fact that whether or not that was exclusive of any increases we got from Bedford Park.
Okay.
And Water Committee members who are here tonight have clarified that what they intended was that their recommendation be the 10% the first year, 8% each subsequent year, plus any increase we get and what we have to pay for water. So in this case, it's 2% effective June 1st.
But then you wouldn't go back down because of the increase already of
Right,
the
right.
2%. So the down the road is not going to be 10, 8, 8, 8. It'll be probably what, 12, 10, 10? Is that what you're thinking?
Well,
Or are you just going to go 1 year at a time?
the ordinance as written will show a 12%, as motioned, I should say, as
Okay.
pending, it will show a 12% increase May 1st. It'll continue to show 8% each subsequent year, but if we get an increase from Bedford Park, you know, in these subsequent years, that 8% is likely to go up higher.
Okay. And are they consistent, Bedford Park, when they make their raises? Do they do it this time every year? Is it better for us
Yes,
to wait?
by contract, they have to notify us, and the rates can only change June 1st, right, Dave? Yeah.
So
yeah,
next year we
will
can
know
plan
every year
accordingly.
in
Okay.
April, early May, whether they're increasing or not.
Okay, well then, just for the record, I think 12 is getting too high, okay? I mean, I would prefer to see a 10 and down. And I know we have some issues that we have to deal with, but a 12% increase is quite a bit over what we've been talking. And like I said, just for the record, I prefer 10. Thank you.
Okay, back to the board.
We've had a lot of rate increases over the last several years, and I feel 10%, and, you know, when you talk about averages, we'll find out, and we can handle more next year, but if we have a hot, dry summer, those averages go way out the window. So I would not be in favor of going to 12%.
Yeah, it was discussed at the Water Committee, and I was privileged to hear some of that, but maybe for residents' information who weren't there and don't know all of that, there are some valid reasons for why we need these increases to maintain the system. Is that correct?
Correct. Under the current rates, we'll see a deficit in the fund. It's an enterprise fund. I think people need to understand it's an enterprise fund where 100% of the money that goes in pays for water and the cost of providing water to residents and to businesses. There's no intermingling of water revenues or expenditures with any other fund in the village. So, you know, it's pretty simple when it comes to your fiduciary responsibility to that fund, is to make sure that you have plenty of money or sufficient money at all times to handle the maintenance of the system and any emergency repairs that may occur. Our system is getting older. We're seeing more water main breaks. We're seeing, we found out in December that we're going to have to spend $300,000 on a new water main that 4 months, in November, we would have had no idea that that expenditure was coming up. Found out in December, now we have to spend that money in May or June of this year. And so that's just one example of why you need a healthy reserve in the water fund. It's the value of our water infrastructure is well in excess of $100 million. So with the rate increases we're talking about, in 5 years, we'd see about a $4.9 million reserve in that fund, assuming no other emergency expenditures come up, which won't happen. There will be emergency expenditures. So even under these rate increases you're talking about, you're still looking at only having about a 5% reserve fund, or less than 5% reserve fund in the water fund, which is sufficient, but it's not a generous amount. It's not an overly positive reserve balance.
And it's also important, I think, to remind everyone or educate those that did not hear it before, is that it appears that the rates have been kept in check for longer than they should have been, and have not gone up over the years like they should, and compared to other villages, which is really the thing that we always have to compare ourselves to. Burr Ridge still has the second lowest water rate of any of the ones that are poll, I think.
Right now, we're second lowest. With these changes, we'd be in the middle, in 5 years, we'd be in the middle of the pack compared to rates today.
Assuming
no one else raises their rates, we'll still be in the middle of the pack.
So as much as
They will raise their rates.
Now, though I don't get a chance to vote unless it's a tie anyway, but I do agree philosophically, any more than 10% seems to be too much. But keep in mind that the overall, this is a move that we've, any increase, I'm dead against any increases, personally, but we know that, but in order to be, prudent, and to have enough money now for $1 million to paint a water tower. I mean, this is just, I can't believe we spend that much money. It's not, I know it's not just a coat of paint, but it's the infrastructure costs are absolutely huge, and we have a village that's now over 60 years old, and the infrastructure needs work. The question is, and that's the balance that the board always goes through, is to seeing what that should be. And the rates, as I mentioned, they need to be increased. Question is how much. And now with the information for Bedford Park, raising it 2.06%, it became possibly even higher, and that's ultimately up to the board. So we do have actually, let me go around here first. Anybody on this side have questions or comments?
I just feel that it's important to plan for the future, and having a strong reserve is very important because, as you mentioned, the equipment is fairly old and we need to replace it all the time. So while I agree the 12% seems high, but if we can make if we can help the reserve, maybe next year we can reconsider based on what the rate increase is.
Trustee Schiappa?
I agree. I think 12% as a number is high, but if you look, we're still the lowest.
True.
12% on top of that, we maintain some competitiveness. But I think we've got an old system. We've got a $300,000 expense and that's scary, and we've got to make sure that we've got those funds to take care of those expenses. We all enjoy the water, and we want to make sure that we all continue enjoying good, clean water.
Okay. Trustee Francis?
Yes, a couple comments. So 11 years ago, our reserves were over $6 million in this fund, and we've been drawing down those reserves to pay for repairs and infrastructure work that needs to be done to maintain the water supply that we enjoy. Now our reserves are going to be $1.7 million, according to this budget, and we're drawing down the reserves another $70,000. We keep drawing it down in order to maintain the second lowest water rate in the area. all enjoyed, all of us residents have enjoyed artificially low water rates. I think it's time that we raise those rates so that we can plan for that $300,000 water main break that's gonna occur 4 or 5 years from now. We have to plan today for it, not then. We can't react then, because the residents will wanna know why we didn't plan, why we didn't have the money to pay for that repair when it happens, if we didn't plan today for that. So, another thing, a comment was made about a hot, dry, wet summer, hot, dry summer. We may enjoy that, but we're having one of the 4th wettest spring on record here in the Chicago area, and we may have a wet summer and cool summer, and we won't get those revenues that we would anticipate. So nobody has a crystal ball that can predict how hot, dry, or how cool and wet the summer will be. So we have to plan for the worst. We have to plan in case that doesn't happen. And we'd be ignoring our fiduciary responsibilities if we didn't make those plans today. Thank you.
Trustee Snyder?
Lastly, if we put these increases through for the next 5 years, at that point in time, 5 years from now, we'll be in the middle of PACT if it was today. And I believe that every village is not gonna leave their rates the same today for 5 years so we can catch up to them. So without the fact of getting forward and putting the money in the bank, when, as per our water department, one main water break, we have 5 or 6 over 50 years old, is 750,000 if correct. Am I correct? So if you have 5 or 6 at 750, and the water towers, the big one is $1.5 million. The small one's $500,000 repairs needed. That's $2 million. So without these increases, we're gonna be paying somewhere. It's gonna be just, as Trustee Francis, drawn down somewhere else, which is gonna blow up the budget.
Any other discussion? There's a motion and a second. And the motion is, once again,
The motion is the full 10% plus the additional 2% from Bedford that we had talked to staff prior.
okay. That's as you understand it, Trustee Francis.
Second?
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
No.
Trustee Pavesa?
No.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Scalpa?
Yes.
4-2.
Motion passes 4-2. C. Ordinance 6C. Consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 59, Section 59.4.1 of the Burridge Municipal Code to amend rates for wastewater service.
As you can see from the ordinance that we've adjusted the sewer rates in a similar fashion as the water rates. Sewer rates, sanitary sewer rates only apply to Cook County residences. The DuPage residents and businesses in DuPage County are serviced by either DuPage County or by the Flag Creek Water Reclamation District. So the sewer rates, again, are for only those customers in Cook County who have wastewater service from the village.
Okay. And the rates are at the same increase?
Well, the
I'm sorry.
2% from Bedford Park doesn't apply, right? Because we're not buying anything.
Discussion? I know we've discussed this before also.
So we're looking at increasing the rate from what to what, please?
Let me get the chart up here for you. Where is it?
Benefit of the residents?
There's the bookmarks on this, Jerry. Ah, there, yeah. So the non-residential rates for sewer, current rate is listed in the top row, May 17th, a year ago, to, the current rate, $40 minimum, or $1.05 per 1,000 gallons, whichever is greater. There's a $40 minimum charge if you use over
Under
some
that.
amount, then it may go up a little bit, but then you can see that minimum charge stays the same every year, but if you go over, it starts to go up for non-residential. For the residential sewer rates, the minimum, there is no variable rate, it's just a minimum, and as recommended by the Water Committee a year ago, it goes up $5 per year to a maximum of $40. That's a fixed rate for residential sewer.
So as a comparison for the residential sewerage rates, I looked at some bills from the village of LaGrange, and their residential bi-monthly sewer charge is $50 per residence, and we're at $20. So again, we're one of the lowest.
Interesting, okay. Discussion? Any residents' comments? We have a motion to approve 6C.
So moved.
Second.
Motion a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
No.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Scalpa?
Yes.
5-1.
Resolutions under considerations, 8A, consideration of Plan Commission recommendation to approve an amendment to the zoning ordinance to add custom art studio as a special use in the B1 Business District, Z09 2018. Text amendment B1, district special uses.
Thank you, Mayor. Administrator, the staff report is open on the top left there, next to the tab.
Evan, before you start in, items 8A and 8B are related, so do you want to present those all at once?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, that's a good idea.
Thank you. Thank you. As stated by the administrator, this is consideration 8A and 8B together. These were approved under one, they were considered under one petition by the Plan Commission last Monday, Z09 2018. The request is made at 306 Burr Ridge Parkway within County Line Square. This is located basically next to Capri in the northeast side of the property. The request is for a text amendment to permit a custom art studio as either a permitted or special use in the B1 district. And they also request a special use approval for said custom art studio in a B1 district if necessary. The petitioner is a woman named Jennifer Hennessy. She's the owner of a business called The Hen House. This business sells hand-painted wood signs, other products. It's a custom business. We have a clay business like this up in the village center where you go and you produce your own, you can paint your own items, whatever you'd like to do. This is the same type of item except it's wooden signs. The text amendment to add a custom art studio as a permitted or special use is due to the fact that according to staff, there was no use in the B1 district that supported the use in a B1 district. There were things like art galleries, craft stores, and interior decorating shops, but there wasn't really anything that met the needs of the petitioner in this way, so thus the need for the text amendment. The second item is for a special use if it was permitted. We weren't sure if this was going to be a permitted use or a special use. We wanted to make sure that the Plan Commission had the opportunity to review it as either. The petitioner has stated that while this is primarily a custom art studio, it will operate as a paint and sip concept, meaning that customers will be able to create their own pieces while consuming their own alcohol on premises. Alcohol will be permitted under a bring your own beverage model, BYOB, bring your own beverage, meaning that customers will be permitted to bring alcohol for consumption, but the business will not originate any retail sales of the alcohol on premises. So there won't be a keg, there won't be a wine bar or anything of the like. Customers would be permitted to bring their own alcohol and consume it within the building that you see at 306 Burr Ridge Parkway. There'd be no, as I said, there'd be no retail sales of alcohol on premises. As such, staff is currently working together to create a new liquor license category which will permit such activity. The village is permitted under the state liquor laws to create liquor licenses to regulate such activity, but that'll be considered under another consideration. If she's not admitted as a use, then there's no need to get a a liquor license. However, the petitioner has stated that the business will observe the standard hours of operations in business districts, which is 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. So there's no conflict between closing later than that as standard. One of the primary discussions held by the Plan Commission was regarding the subject of parking. At County Line Square, every use that goes in there is required to have a parking variance if the use has greater parking requirements than the previous use that occupied said space. At this particular space, it was occupied by a retailer. Tuesday morning, it's a clothing retailer that no longer occupies this particular 1,300 square feet. Staff had interpreted this to be a retail use which had matched an equal amount of parking needs. The Plan Commission had also agreed, but there was some discussion about whether it should be defined as a retail use or some other use. And there was a chance that if it was defined as something other than retail, it may have a higher parking requirement than if it was retail. Just for reference, a retail or service good such as this, or any retail or service industry, would be one space for every 250 square feet of space. So about five parking spaces is the requirement. There is a clause within the zoning ordinance that says that the Plan Commission can define its own parking requirements for uses should they decide that none of the specified uses within the zoning ordinance are met by such need. So it can almost be a custom requirement. However, the motions that were passed by the Plan Commission stated that it would be a retail use and thus did not need a parking variance. As stated by Administrator Pollack, there were two motions on this subject. The first was to recommend approval for the special use text amendment to add custom art studio as a special use in the B1 district. The second was to recommend an approval for the hen house for a special use. There were a few conditions on that, the first of which, aside from being limited to the hen house, was that no alcohol sales can be originated at the premises, and they must operate with a liquor license if they're going to have any alcohol at all. These are conditions that the Plan Commission recommended for your consideration. Commissioner Brolin is here this evening if you'd like any further comment on to the perspective of the Plan Commission, but that is all the background I have to provide. If you have any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I'm sure Jim would as well.
Any questions of the Assistant Village Administrator? Trustee Snyder?
With the Tuesday morning, you're stating it's 5 parking spaces for the 1,300 square feet.
Yes.
Okay, and the park and sip, or the paint and sip, how many people are anticipating? They're anticipating more than 5, correct?
Yes.
Maybe 10?
If you're asking how many would be in the space at one time, the petitioner had said that she could accommodate parties up to 24 people at the space or during a specific private party. Part of the use is to accommodate private parties who would come and bring their own alcohol onto the premises. We see this a lot with fundraisers, group events, things like that. And she had stated to the Plan Commission that she would be expecting parties of up to 24 guests at a time, not including staff.
First of all, I think it's great idea. The only problem that I have is it's not going to be 5 cars. Let's assume that it might be 12 cars. 24 people, 2 per car, that's 12. Right now, that parking space, or that particular area, at least in my opinion, is overtaxed as it is. There is just no parking whatsoever to it. So has staff thought about what else is available or how you're going to put the additional cars? If there's 5 employees, 5 cars, 4 cars, and if 12 or 24 individuals come, 12 cars, maybe 10 cars, that's 15 more. There's no spaces there is now, especially from the time, 4:30 to 7 o'clock, 4:30 to 8 o'clock at night.
So the question is, where would they be parking?
Where would they be parking?
They probably would not be able to get a spot easily right in front of it. So there'd be other space.
Can I ask where?
Around the other sides of the parking lot, more towards Brookhaven, there's always spaces over there. But if we're talking about parking right in front of it, you can never guess exactly how much parking will be available but to your point, there does seem to be some crowd there during the evening hours, which is when parties would be taking place.
For clarification, what are the busiest hours they're expecting?
The petitioner had stated that she tends to have parties in the evenings and then on weekends. So the business would basically be open 10 to 4 to operate kind of on the staff would be doing all of their orders that they had done internally and that they had received online or by some other medium. And then the evenings would have more presence for parties and private groups.
Now, again, normal, most popular hours are 10 a.m. till 4 p.m.
I would say they would certainly have more in the evenings when their parties were there. The petitioner had stated that she anticipated more traffic in the evenings.
And one consideration of this is 1,300 square feet was not the entire Tuesday mornings, correct?
Correct.
How large was the Tuesday mornings space before? Do you remember?
It was about 4,000 square feet.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there's a boutique store that occupies part of it?
Yes.
That same space?
I had neglected to
Ladies
mention
boutique
that.
called Lepa Boutique?
Yeah, I had neglected to mention that there was a permitted use that had gone in, Lepa Boutique, which is the exact same type of use to the letter. It's another clothing retailer, just as Tuesday morning was a clothing retailer. So some of that space is currently occupied by a retailer. There is they essentially divided Tuesday morning into 3 suites of equal size. So Lepa took about 1,300 square feet. This business would take about 1,300 square feet, and then something else would occupy that remaining balance of 1,300 or 1,400 square feet.
Has there been any results for how many parking spots are being used up by the Lepa Boutique? Is it?
Lepa is required to have 5. They're the
Right.
exact same size as this business would be. I don't think there's any busy time, evenings versus day for a retailer like that. I think they tend to have just general traffic consistently all day. So I don't think there's necessarily a peak time for that particular
So
retailer.
more daytime than evening, but at least the only, what I'm looking for is some good news here that there's not there's
It's not like a restaurant going in or something.
right, and
to
it's
that
been,
effect.
and the other 1,300 square feet is being underused. I mean, if there was some hope, if there's some degree of allowing more than 5 cars being needed, at least that's not a heavy use property, as was my point. And just like I believe right next door is also the Capri is a spa.
There's Med and Spa, yeah.
Right, Med and Spa does not get a lot of evening use. But the reality is still it's crowded because you have a lot of restaurants, so. Thank you. Trustee Matal?
The Pace parking lot, which is right behind, would that be used in the evenings?
Thanks for reminding me about that, and I've been meaning to make mention of that, but I'm gonna let the village administrator give the news on the Pace bus spot.
Well, Pace is planning to expand that parking lot
Right,
for
and it's
their
not
use.
used from 4 to 10.
It is not available for use during the day by retail shopping center customers. They did have an agreement with Capri to use it in the evenings and weekends for valet parking.
Okay.
But beyond that, it's not really available for use by the shopping center.
And what's the status of the permit to expand?
They are coming before the Plan Commission sometime soon, is that
Yes,
correct,
they had
Evan?
stated they would like to come before a June public hearing for the Plan Commission. A parking lot is a special use if it's just a parking lot as the primary use, so they need to come before the Plan Commission to expand what they have. So they're planning on a June hearing for that.
And they informed me that they hope to be under construction in August or September.
And is there a number of cars, spaces that you have preliminarily they're looking to increase it?
There's 80 now. They had talked about doing another 60 based on what they had seen for the space. There's just kind of, they wanted to make sure that there was adequate ingress and egress there. Sorry, I don't have any other way to describe it. It's kind of a fan right now.
Right behind you.
So, as you can see, there's only a couple ways in and out, and they talked about perhaps doing another
There's only one way in and out.
kind of row, if you will, bumping it back to do another 50 or 60 spaces, but I haven't seen a final plan that they're submitting yet.
And currently, the Capri has that arrangement, right?
Yes, they do have an agreement to use it for valet and employees, but that's non-exclusive. So
That's not exclusive?
it's not exclusive, no.
Meaning anybody could use it?
Capri is the only one who has written permission to, but I suppose theoretically someone else could come in and
because they're not gonna check, gee, are you a Capri customer?
Yeah, they're not validating at the bus stand there, so.
Didn't think so, yeah, interesting, but overall, good news, especially if somebody has a rear entrance to their location. Though it's still again, we're a little spoiled in Burr Ridge with parking,
Exactly.
wanting parking right in front. And it's, God forbid, you have to walk over 3 lanes.
Right. Go to Oak Brook and,
Yeah, go to Oak Brook and you're lucky to park by 22nd Street.
exactly.
Okay.
So I'm hearing this discussion, and I certainly I feel I'm in favor of this use and this business and stuff, and I'd hate to penalize them for these issues that are really not their fault. I mean, parking can be an issue there at night. There's a lot of activity on the one side at night there. We've all seen it. On the other hand, if you're willing to walk a few rows over or park maybe over by the grocery store, there is ample parking at night. During the day, it's crowded on the grocery store side, and at night, that side tends to get crowded. Now, I think there's ways we could work this out, and I think we should have a larger discussion about parking. I don't think that's part of what we're talking about now, but some of these options may be getting permission for other people to park in that back lot or things. In general, we should address the parking overcrowding at night on that one side, but I don't think that should preclude this business from getting their approval to go in and start operating. I think that's a bigger issue that we need to deal with in another way.
Trustee Matal?
I agree with Trustee Model, and maybe we can talk to the Capri Valet service and they can valet if they have parties over there. So,
Certainly.
that's, something that
that's
can easily
reasonable.
be figured out.
Trustee Francis?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the petitioner for wanting to come to our village. Thank you. Appreciate it. And we all want you to be successful. What we don't want is them to fail because we didn't address the parking problem at this mall. I was there last week on a weeknight, 7 p.m. I had to park over by the bank to attend one of the businesses along that crowded section there. And without Tuesday morning fully occupied, there is a parking problem. Yes, you do have to walk several rows. And I want to ask you, it wasn't mentioned at the Plan Commission public hearing, what's the average weight of one of your products that a customer might take home? One of your signs? 5, 10, 15 pounds? 5 pounds? Okay, so I've got to lug your product, which I just made, and I love it, and I want to take it back to my car, but now I've got to walk 4 or 5 rows over. I might have 2 of them. So it become an inconvenience. We don't want their customers to not come back because they had to walk a great distance. So as a board, we have to solve this problem. We have to work with the mall owner and work with Pace and work with whoever else to solve this problem. Make it easier for all of the customers to park and enjoy these fine businesses that we've attracted to this center. We talked about this when Capri expanded. We talked about the parking problems then. We talked about how the parking problem at County Line Square and how the owner blamed the concert people who were coming over, parking over in his parking lot. Well, we haven't had concerts since September, since late August, and through all this time, and the parking lots are full. The problem exists even without the concert people there. So we need to help this new business and all the other businesses there by addressing this parking problem with a long-term solution. Thank you.
Trustee Snyder?
There's another place called the Cycle Shop in that corner over by Dow.
Right.
And all of the 60 participants that go there between like 4 and 7, it's gonna directly impact that business. Because if there's 60 individuals, there's like 60 cars, and they're all trying to park right there. I've also had the displeasure of walking over there and parking at the bank or on the other side by Brookhaven, because you can't go over to Dow, you can't go to the county wine merchant. So rather than penalize this fine business that wants to come to Burr Ridge, let's address it now, because it is the building owner who put the situation, again, to Burr Ridge.
And by addressing the problem, what do you have in mind?
Is there a way to get it, if,
The CTA.
going to the RTA, is there any way to do a walkway from behind, coming forward?
A walkway from the RTA?
See where the RTA is off on
From the Pace lot?
on the Pace lot. If you, going toward, there's a break between the buildings,
Right.
correct? How about having like a walkway parked over there, and then you put 50, 60 parking spaces there, you could get to both sides, both ways.
Well, the break in the building, there is no space between the corner of the building, is there? That I know of.
I don't remember, honestly.
I believe they're touching.
If the question is, if the question is adding spaces, there's certainly space to add space within the main parking lot, and we can address that with the property owner. There's space for about 25 extra spaces within the existing main lots. As stated, sometimes what has occurred has been just the case of the outlots being developed. So Chase Bank, we had lost about 10 spaces from that, but not everybody feels like they can park in the Chase lot because it looks like kind of a private business. So what was previously all public parking looks almost semi-private right now. So we lost spaces, and there's almost like, I'm not sure I can park in there because I'm not going to the bank. So, but if adding spaces is the issue, there is space to add space within the main lot without necessitating a need to build additional parking behind the premises. But we can certainly look at all options.
Trustee Model?
It sounds like, again, we have a good problem here, right? We've attracted some great businesses, and they're bringing in some great customers. This is a blessing. This is a good problem for us to be dealing with here. It sounds like there are solutions, but I don't know if we're going to solve it tonight. I think we should direct staff to research some of these options, talk to some of these owners, talk to the PACE people. There may be one solution, there might be multiple solutions that solve the problem, but I think we all agree we need to do something about the parking problem to keep supporting the new businesses that are coming and the other great businesses that are here. I see some of the other owners here tonight. So it's a good problem for us to have, and I think we can solve it, but I don't think we'll come up with a solution at this moment, but nor do I think we should hold up their plans to get their business going as well. We can solve the parking problem is what I'm saying.
And one of the other things to consider, though, is how many businesses how many businesses are going to want to go into that space and not require 5 or 10 cars.
Everybody needs parking. We need to solve this problem.
That's how, it's and I don't know that there is the ideal solution, because it kind of ebbs and flows, and there are several places like Kirkshire's Cleaners and Subway's restaurant that don't have a lot of traffic, so it's kind of all evens out. Yes?
I agree with Trustee Model. I think we shouldn't be hung up right now on the traffic. I think we should approve the Plan Commission's recommendation. But I also believe that since Metra is talking about expanding, is talk to them about what's the maximum we can work and maybe make that whole area parking so that we have some of our own parking, maybe talk to the owner of the facility to maybe buy some of the land from Metra. I think there's a viable option here, and it's not going to be solved today, but I think we should approve the request.
And by the way, one other thought is, if there is one unit, approximately 1,300 square feet, left over from Tuesday morning, maybe that be the pass-through.
Yeah,
That would be
like we have on this side by.
Correct.
the place that's, and make the recommendation, because again, he has to also understand that in order to solve the problem, he needs to be part of it. And that could be
at least building, he needs to.
Right.
Right.
Right. It could be
a good problem, but.
It is to that extent. It's I've oftentimes pulled into Starbucks looking for a parking spot, and when I first became mayor, I was just my dream, and hope was that all the places would be filling up and the village center be more popular. But now I can't find a parking spot.
Can't have it both ways.
Yeah, no, but hopefully we can get them to move on that other outlot one day to allow for more parking. In any case, any further discussion on these? Is there a motion on the table?
Second.
To do what?
To agree with the Plan Commission's recommendation and approve the considerations.
And it was, just for point of clarification, was it what it was? I have to ask Plan Commissioner Bowling. Was it a unanimous vote?
It was.
it was. So it is a unanimous vote from the planning commission, their recommendation to say, to
So
do it.
my motion is concur with the planning commission's unanimous vote and approve both A and B under the considerations here.
And that, as you understand, is that you seconded, trustee Schiappa?
Can we motion in second?
Motion is second?
Technically, you'll be directing staff to prepare the ordinances.
Yes.
Yes, to concur with the planning commission's recommendation to direct staff to prepare the ordinances in support of consideration A and B on the agenda.
Okay. Is there still a second?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion?
On the special use, can we maybe have, my question is this, at 5 spaces per 1,300 square feet, it's not gonna work. Now, we've come up with a couple ideas to offset the parking. Rather than punish, or not punish, but put a little tougher situation on for 5 parking, shouldn't we change the motion to have additional parking for them now?
More.
Right now, if they have 24 individuals that come, plus 5 employees, how many cars? And right now, the way it's
understand.
drafted now is they get 5 spaces. Okay? I'm just asking, to make it the right way going forward.
Well, I would consider amending the motion if it's appropriate and add that staff research these solutions that we talked about. I don't think we can fully make a commitment
I
tonight.
agree, that's perfect, then let's have it that way, rather than just over and cut it dry.
Okay, so I will add that on to the end of my motion, that staff research solutions for the overall parking issues going on there.
Thank you.
Maybe present some options to the board.
Thank you, trustee Mao.
You're fine.
Call the vote. Roll call, please.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Schiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Paveza?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
6-0.
Motion's passed 6-0. Under considerations, it's 8C. Consideration of request for McNaughton Development to pay Lakeside Point sidewalk donation in increments rather than in whole prior to recording plat.
Yes, this is a request from McNaughton Development, the developer of Lakeside Point. They are requesting that they be allowed to pay their sidewalk donation, which is $77,000 for portions of the sidewalk that are not being built. They're requesting that they be allowed those to be paid with each permit as it's issued, rather than pay up front. Our subdivision ordinance states that sidewalk donations are required to be paid up front prior to the recording of the plat. And again, the developer's asking for, to be able to pay that in increments. And John Barry from McNaughton Development is present if you have any questions.
I thought that's how we did make the motion when we agreed to it. I thought that there was some discussion about this at the time. And
That was, I think you're referring to the school donation.
Okay, thank
We
you.
did allow them to pay that in increments, but it was not, the pathway sidewalk was not
portion.
addressed that way.
Have we done this in the past?
No.
Okay. I
Can
don't
you
think
con-
we want to set a precedent.
Can you confirm the amount is just 77,000 or 77,000 per unit?
$77,000 total. So divided.
Remember, this is a fee in lieu of sidewalks
Right.
that we didn't want to have built anyway, those? Trustee Matal?
They would pay it with the sale of each property or
The issuance of the permit.
for each property? So it could drag on for the next 5 years, potentially.
Unless or you could you could allow them to do that with the outstanding balance due in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years.
Or break it up in
Break it up in some other fashion, right?
a percentage of properties sold for every 10 properties, or 11 properties in this case, 42, every 10 and a half properties.
Yeah.
Trustee Snyder?
Doug, I thought we made accommodations already in lowering the fees for the sidewalks for the subdivision already.
Well, they are providing all of the required sidewalks or donations in lieu of the sidewalks, except that we waived the required sidewalk on Commonwealth And in lieu of that, they're building an off-site sidewalk on Bridewell between their property and Burridge Parkway. They're also extending the lakeside pathway around the perimeter of the lake, which is above and beyond the minimum requirements of the subdivision ordinance.
Trustee Francis?
So what was the total net reduction in sidewalk donations as a result of waiving the sidewalk on Commonwealth and asking them to build the sidewalk on Bridewell?
When you just compare those two pieces, the extra Bridewell sidewalk was about 500 lineal feet. The Commonwealth sidewalk was 1,400 lineal feet.
So 900 lineal feet of sidewalk they were given relief for.
Right.
That was the first time we've done that in the village, correct?
To my knowledge, yes.
And the very next developer that came in asked for sidewalk donation relief, correct?
Are you referring to the 75th and Drew? Or, yeah, I think that's correct.
So
75th.
we've already set the precedent, and we can expect this from every developer that comes forward to ask for the sidewalk impact fees, the street improvement impact fees, whatever, to be waived. They didn't have to develop improved Commonwealth Avenue, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that more relief. And for the privilege of a PUD, they had to give us benefit back to the village, and that benefit is the pathway improvements around the lake and the bridge over the spillway. That's separate. That's for the benefit of a PUD, because they didn't qualify for a PUD. They didn't have the acreage. So I oppose this piecemeal donations to the Pathway Fund. Pathway Fund can't survive on that. They can't budget what they need to do to maintain our pathways, to improve our pathways. We haven't done it in the past. I don't see the need now.
Before we ask John to make comments, he mentioned this, the developers at 75th and Drew. What property was that?
It was a two-lot re-subdivision where they reconfigured two lots, and the board agreed to compromise on their sidewalk donation and reduce that donation.
So the compromise that Trustee Francis is talking about is someone that bought it for, I guess he and his family, wasn't it? They moved the lots from one direction to the other.
Right.
That kick-started our ability to charge them for a sidewalk that we don't want to have built anyway. And that's what we compromise on?
Right.
Just want to make sure.
And it wasn't a subdivision,
It was a subdivision, it was two houses.
yeah, it met the definition, but.
Thank you very much.
To Highland Fields number 3, they came back and asked for relief on the impact fees. Wanted them rescinded back to 1999.
Right.
I was referring to that
Right.
episode.
But the two homes that we had a discussion on, we were never gonna put curb and sidewalk there anyway.
Right. We weren't. And that's part of.
There were already residents also.
And that's part of the issue that I have with all this whole topic, which I think we talked about before, and I'll be happy to expand upon before we vote. John?
I guess I just wanted to add, the Commonwealth issue was mulled over quite a bit. We've always felt that Commonwealth, since we were not impacting Commonwealth, we were not accessing Commonwealth, and the improvement of Commonwealth should not have been inflicted on this property. The neighbors didn't want this street, so we felt we went over and above by adding the additional sidewalk along Bridewell in lieu of not doing that work.
But you were given a relief on 2 internal sidewalks, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We're paying, but that's the cash loan we're paying now.
But it's the way the ordinance is written. It's not whether you impact Commonwealth or the residents don't want it or do want it. It's the way the ordinance is written. We've never done it in the past.
Well, I'd have some recommendations for that ordinance. I'd have some recommendations for that ordinance.
Trustee Snyder, do you have something else you want to say?
No. But I do agree with Trustee Francis on this one. Yes, I've not only been on the board a short time, it's in there, it's in the bylaws, it's been followed, rules. That one individual with the 2 family members changing their homes and facing each other, that was different than the situation.
Yeah, in my opinion, shouldn't have been any fee there.
Right, correct, I agree. But that's beside the point. And the amount of square footage on the Commonwealth versus that, granted, the developer's given us something, but we've already given them the break, pay the fee and be done.
John, if there was an alternative to pay all up front or pay each property, each property is sold, is there a happy median? Because again, I'm trying to do is as you know, philosophically, I disagree with the whole idea of charging a fee in lieu of something the village doesn't want to have built anyway. I would like to go on record for that. However, we also know that you're one of the largest subdivisions we're having built in the village today, and we appreciate the investment and the confidence. So I think this board, which is made up of mostly business people, are even more sensitive to a businessman's business needs. If there was a median or an option, is there one that you could think of that would be more palatable than all up front?
Well, I guess just off the top of my head, here in the budget discussion earlier tonight, it seems like you have your pathway funds earmarked for this year. I guess what I would ask that, at least to get us started, that we would pay on building permit for the first prorated share on the building permit for the first year, and if your parkway or your sidewalk fund is tapped out by this time this year, then we could accelerate the payment on the balance of the funds by this time next year.
Trustee Model, I saw his hand first.
I'll be very brief. I think we did I think that hopefully you feel you've gotten a good deal with the arrangements we made at the last meeting. I think it was good for the village, that it was a fair deal for both sides. Other people might feel otherwise, but I think it was a fair deal. But I don't understand the point to do this now. I mean, is there some reason? Is there a pain? Is there a financing issue, or why?
It's not a financing issue. It's just a matter of, for instance, we're going to be writing a check next week, or probably this week, for $85,000 worth of engineering fees we have to pay before the plat. Just whenever you get these big developments going, you pay X number of dollars for the property, sure, X number of dollars to develop it, and we appreciate the village's work on the property. We appreciate being able to pay the school impact fees on the building permit. It sounds like a minuscule issue, but it all helps when you're trying to get these projects going.
Over the years, we've seen a lot of subdivisions come before the board. Every one of them have requested some type of alleviation of costs or expenses, and the one thing we have done is pretty much hold the line, because once you do it once, you set a precedent and everything goes downhill. And every contractor comes up, they'll throw the other one in your face. Well, you did it for so-and-so, how come you're not doing it for us? So I just can't see it.
Did you ask your engineer to take payments for his $85,000 fee?
It's your engineer.
I'm sorry?
I'm paying your engineer.
Trustee Schiappa?
Have any other villages taken?
Most of our impact fees are all paid on building permits in the vast majority of the villages we work on.
They're paid what, I'm sorry?
They're paid on building permits.
They're paid on building permits.
Yes, sir.
In most other towns?
When you develop, most impact fees, school fees, road impact fees, sewer and water impact fees, those are traditionally building permit fees.
Okay, any other discussion? Are there any motions or amended motions for this topic? I'm sorry? Oh, yes, good idea. Come forward.
Thank you. Alice Crimp at 7515 Drew. I believe that, this is a pretty big project, probably around, 30 million? And to me, 77,000 does sound like a small drop in the bucket, but I do realize you have expenses to pay. I also believe we're setting a precedent. I think what concerns me is if you do choose to do installments or as they go, we have that same problem about increasing costs over time. So you can't just take your $77,000 and divide it and dish it out, because like you were talking with our other rates, prices go up. So how would we account for that? It would be my opinion that they need to pay the impact fees up front and now. Thank you.
Anyone else like the rest of the board this time?
Ellen Raymond. So of course, we're all happy to have another McNaughton development in the village. But even though they've done a lot of good for the village, I don't think they should get special exceptions. And just to learn from your neighbor, Western Springs, you know, if you're hit by another recession, like Dartmoor walked away and went in foreclosure, you don't get that money then. So, you know, if these people are well-funded and they can give you the money up front, you're sure to get the money. Otherwise, it's really an unknown.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, now it's back to the board. We have a motion or amended motions. Move on.
I'll make a motion to deny the consideration to pay in installments and keep it as is, where they pay the full amount to the Pathway Commission.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Baveza?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Scappa?
Yes.
6-0.
Motion passes 6-0. 8D, discussion of petition from restaurant owners to allow video gambling.
Yes, you have in your packet a petition signed by 9 restaurant owners in the village. It was submitted to staff by resident John Bittner. We provided some very basic background questions. The village staff has not spent a lot of time researching this or providing information. I'll try to provide any information I can if you have questions. But I guess the primary issue is does the village board want staff to spend more time on this issue and continue to provide more research? And if there's any more questions you want answered, we can do that.
Questions, discussion?
Well, like you said, this just came up. I know it was, when it first came up years ago, it was unanimous that the village and the board was not interested in having video gaming at that time. We checked with just about all the restaurants and none of them were interested. And I know Mr. Bittner brought it up about 4 or 6 weeks ago when it was on the agenda. And I looked at all the, real quick, I haven't had really a lot of time to look at it and maybe put it off because there might be questions we might want to ask. But when I looked at how many of the villages still do not have video gaming, I was surprised. There's an awful lot of them. In fact, I think there's more that don't have it than that does have it. And from some of the remarks and just, you know, I don't know if $2,500 to $3,000 a month max is worth putting video gaming in. I mean, there's a few more questions that I want to look at, but to me, I don't see an overwhelming reason to do it. Or change rather and make it available.
Trustee Snyder?
What I'd like to see is, I'd like to see staff do a little investigation. Look at some of the villages, Willowbrook and the rest. Find out, is there a value to the village? The The businesses that signed this is probably only a small number. I'm not sure if everyone wants it, or there might be more. The point would be is it of value to the village? Okay, Burridge is a special place in your own words. And I'm not trying to make it look like a Crown Casino or something like that. But at the end of the day, if a restaurant or a facility wishes to have some where it's not when you walk in the door and I see them facing me, it's in the back area, and they wish to have them there, why should us as a village not at least do a little bit of research? Staff can make a couple calls to some of the local around and find out what's the value it's going to bring to us at the end of the day. If we give these 9 petitioners, just for an example, they get X number of dollars. What does it bring to the village? What does it do for them? If we don't investigate it, we're not doing our job.
Okay. Trustee Model?
I don't personally have a moral objection to it at all. I also recognize that the very special place that Burridge is and the image and the brand that comes along with it. On the other hand, I would think that if this were to be allowed, a lot of places wouldn't put it in. It doesn't fit their clientele, doesn't fit their brand. It's not going to happen. But I've been to other towns. I've seen ones that appear to do it the right way, where it's not right in front. I've seen others that I really wouldn't want that in Burridge. But again, I'm not a big fan of saying no to something until I see all the information, and I don't understand how much it could help these businesses. I question whether it's of that much value, because it does seem to be in a lot of places right now, and I wonder how much revenue people are going to get off of it. But I also haven't heard from a lot of residents. We've had a few limited emails and stuff here. It hasn't really been discussed. So I'm not opposed to learning more about it. I'm not necessarily in favor of it or opposed to it. I'd like to learn a little bit more.
Trustee Schiappa?
I think if these restaurants wanted it, I think they would come to the board and ask for it. Versus someone else, a third party coming. So I don't know how much they really want video gaming here. And I don't even recognize what the signatures are and how these signatures reflect.
So it's not 9 restaurant owners asking for it, it's 9 people, we don't know who they are? Or maybe I misunderstood.
I don't know,
the
I can't
letter.
read
Do
the
we have
signatures.
do we have the 9 restaurants by name?
Well, where you have the petition, I did not research the names or signatures. I took it at its, as presented, that it was representatives of these 9 restaurants in the village.
So we don't know if it's 9 restaurants. It's 9 restaurant
It was
managers or
presented to me as it was 9
restaurants.
restaurants.
So it could, but we could have the petitioner clarify that.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe we should start with that.
We ask someone in the crowd if actually one of the business owners is here, or she is.
Actually,
one.
the petitioner, John Bittner is here. We could always ask him. Well, actually, Gene, if you come up here, I would also like to find out from John what 9 restaurants they are.
I'll be there 1 second.
Okay.
Well, a lot of them are small businesses and they're working their dinner hour right now and they couldn't make it, or they weren't even aware that it was on the agenda tonight. So I don't know if they were made aware or not made aware. I was made aware by John Bittner. For the most part, we're just small business owners. We're not corporate restaurants. We're looking for another revenue source. Every year there's always something that we're up against. We got to change what we're doing because there's another restaurant coming in or another thing. And if this is something that would help us as business owners and maybe the village, I don't know what the tax revenue is. You talk about balanced budgets and water rates going up. I don't know what the benefit tax-wise is to the village. There seems to be some money in it. The other towns have it. Indiana Park, Willowbrook. I think we lose business to them. When I go home, go down Wolf Road. Wolf's Head is jammed with cars. 3 years ago, there was 4 cars in the parking lot. Now there's no parking. So I guess what I'm asking, I would look into it as a village, and if there's an upside for the village and the business owners, I would think you could investigate.
Just a point for the record, I know who you are, but
Yes.
Gene Halloran.
Hello, Zach.
And what's the business?
County Wine Merchant.
Thank you.
and Cabanitas was coming, Dow, but like I said, this was their dinner hours, Porterhouse was coming, and it was last minute that we found out that the hearing was this evening. In fact, I closed early to get here so, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Loris, I should know that. This is, I gave you a copy of what I'm giving.
They have that.
Yeah.
Latavia signed it, Dow signed it, Capri signed it, Jeans signed it, Porterhouse signed it, Falco signed it, Crown Royal Hotel over here signed it, and I stopped once I got to 9. That's the original, not the copy. And I can't make those phony signatures. You can call them.
That's business there.
But you can keep that. You can give that to Doug.
The original?
Yeah, absolutely, because that's what it's for. What's happening is that my wife likes to gamble. She likes with her friends, and they go out, and we go out to dinner and everything else. Well, if you go to Wolf said, if you go to Madison Club, if you go to Chicken Basket, you're going to see poor rich people, and they're playing video games. They are. My wife wanted to go out to take one of our kids for their birthday party, and they all wanted to go to Madison Club so they could play some video games. We're losing the revenue. The average figure is about, we would make $200,000 on 9 machines, 9 locations, 5 machines per location. If we could get it into the hotels, we'd have people that come in and visit here who are helping pay revenues to our village. Rosemont did it. They're building a baseball field because of it, a semi-pro baseball team, all cost by video games. And, well, they've got the most successful video operation in the United States, actually, right now, profit-wise. The Rivers. This is a benefit that is not something that we're doing illegally. This is what the state did to generate revenue. We're looking at costs and everything that we're doing. We have a budget problem with the police thing for about $1 million. If we just put $100,000 a year off of gaming, that doesn't hurt our revenues, but benefits us, why shouldn't we do it? And if we get people from Hinsdale or Darien, and the biggest problem that the restaurateurs have here is they're on both sides inundated with these gaming. So it's very easy to go next door. I want to be a Me Too. And make it careful, don't exaggerate it. Make sure that somebody puts it in nicely, not ridiculous. And I think it benefits our village. And if it can benefit our village, it's in our best interest. If it's extra money, we can spend it on different things. If the restaurants are making $50,000 to $70,000 more per year because of these machines, they can benefit us for our 5K runs and other things that they can put money into it that also generate better things for what we're doing. I don't want you to say it's wrong, because I don't like gambling. I don't gamble. My wife does. I don't even believe in it, because I don't think you can really win. But I really think if you're over 21 years old and you want to do it, go ahead. Have fun. Do it within limits. But it can benefit, I think if it can benefit our village, I think we should definitely look at it and really deeply consider it before we just say no. Thank you.
Trustee Francis?
Mr. Bittner, question? All these signatures, these are all owners?
Yes. Or operating manager. Let's give permission. I came back to 3 places before I got a signature for permission. But every one of them, if you call them up, they'll say yes. Day one.
I have no issue with exploring it, the possible benefits to these businesses and to the village. We also have to take into consideration what the residents want, first and foremost.
Yes.
I don't see an overwhelming demand for what the residents coming before us and say we want video gambling in our restaurants here in the village. Maybe they do make a conscious decision to go to Willowbrook or to Indian Head Park to gamble and to eat, but certainly when we have parking problems in our shopping centers and our village center because the restaurants are full, it's not a problem. So, but And also, there's a cost side to this. I mean, so you put in 5 machines, which is the maximum allowed, according to this handout, at a restaurant like Capri or at Dow or somewhere else. Table space has to be given up. You just can't shove them in the corner. You have to be accessible, so some table space. So the revenue from the tables isn't being generated anymore.
Offset.
Because now there's video games in their place. So that has to be examined as well, if we're gonna look at this fairly.
Yeah.
So, just a couple of comments, but please proceed and investigate.
Trustee Professor?
Well, like you said, a lot of this information just came to us. I gotta agree with the other trustees about putting this off on any type of a vote till we have had acquired more information. Doug's got some great numbers here on how much is spent on a machine and what the total profit to the village really is per machine. And so I think this information should be given to all of us, and as we read this and come up with more questions, to funnel them through Doug here, and so he can get us the answers and we can make a legitimate question, because I've already had two residents, they're against it. They didn't tell me why, they're just against it.
Well, actually, I know, Doug, you didn't do the preliminary research on, you didn't invest time, effort, or staff to research it for the sake of Burr Ridge, but you've had some experience with this recently at another village. Is there anything that you can share that would be shed some light on it?
Well, I can tell you that I did, in terms of numbers, and this is a year old, this data is a year old, but our neighbor, Willowbrook, as of a year ago, had 4 different locations with video gaming, 20 terminals total, which might be comparable to what we might end up having if we were to do it. I can't say that for sure. The village municipal share of revenues from those was $37,000. That was in Willowbrook. Indian Head Park had 3 locations and 15 terminals total. Their total revenue was $55,000. And also I'd given there's a list of villages that have opted out in the state of Illinois, and there are quite a few of those. I don't have that in front of me, but in terms of the law, I mean, it's up to each village to decide whether or not to allow video gambling. The state law allows villages to opt out. We opted out soon after that state law was passed in 2009, but we can always opt back in if we want. From my experience, it's really a community values issue, community branding issue. I think that's the way it's typically been presented, as to whether that that is something that a particular community wants to be involved in. There's definitely revenue to be had. It's not for a town the size of Burr Ridge. I don't think it's a great deal of revenue, but it is revenue, and every bit helps, of course. A lot of villages have done advisory referendums to gauge the residents' opinions about video gambling. Typically those fail because people generally, the general public and the voters in general typically are not in favor, from my experience, are not in favor of video gambling. There's an opportunity under the state law for a voter-initiated referendum, which is a binding referendum, but it requires a significant number of names on the petition to get it on the ballot. But in that case, it is a binding referendum.
Would it be possible if, after all the information, we're thinking of maybe trying it, would it be possible to see how it works and put it on a probation for a year before we vote on it?
I've heard that discussed, and I think the answer to your question is yes, it's possible. I think it's not very practical because businesses have to make a pretty major investment to get it going. And I can imagine businesses being hesitant to make that investment without knowing, that it's going to last for a while.
You had, but specifically, you had some experience in Riverside, and what were the stages and what were the steps and what was the outcome?
Well, a couple of businesses came to the village of Riverside and asked for the village to consider that. Initially, it was turned down by the Riverside Village Board. It then came back a year or so later. The village board was concerned about, primarily the residents of the village were very strongly opposed to it. The Riverside Village Board had put an advisory referendum on the ballot a few weeks ago, and that was it was 76 to 24% opposed to allowing video gambling in Riverside. It was an advisory referendum which the board had committed to follow.
And was it how much research was conducted there that we can borrow ahead of time, and what did it entail?
There's plenty of research out there that we can borrow, and there's plenty, and a lot of information. But I can tell you, it did occupy a great deal of their staff's time as well as the village board's time. They sent it to the Economic Development Committee. They had a public hearing. They invited different speakers in for different public sessions to discuss the pros and cons of video gambling. And then they had several board meetings devoted primarily to discussing it.
Interesting. Trustee Snyder?
Doug, you said how many businesses came to the village of Riversiders? How many businesses came to the village? Did they come 9? Did they come 3? Was there 2? Was there 4? How many?
In Riverside?
Yes.
There were 2 businesses initially, and then later on, just one business came forward asking for
So 3, maybe 2 or 3 total.
Well, 2 total. One came back again the second time.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Francis?
Doug, just to clarify your numbers, it was $37,000 for Willowbrook per year?
In September 2016 to August 2017, so 1 year period.
Time period, and that was for 20 machines total?
Right.
$37,000. And in Indian Head Park, $55,000 over a 1 year period for 15 machines?
Right.
Okay. So if we were to, I'm not saying I support this or I'm against it, but if we were to allow this, we're going to draw on some of that money that's going to those towns. We're going to take some of the $37,000 that Willowbrook is getting and some of the $55,000 that Indian Head Park's getting, and we're going to get a piece of that. There's only so much gambling money to go around. So it's not like we're going to get $55,000 or $37,000. It's going to get a piece of that.
I would add, Trustee Francis, to your point earlier about occupying space in the restaurants. I did see some research to that effect that that it does. There is some research. I don't know that it was definitive, but that indicated there is lost revenues in other areas. It also indicated that turnover at restaurants tend to be smaller as a result. People spend more time playing the video gambling than they would.
Those are the excellent pieces of information that we all need so we can make an informed decision, and we appreciate if you collect all those pieces.
Absolutely.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? Doug, how did you get those numbers?
This comes from the state of Illinois. I got them secondhand.
Okay, I'm just curious because I played golf at one of the restaurateurs in this area, and he made $47,000 on his 5 machines alone in 1 year. So I'm kind of...
Well, this was just the numbers that the municipality got, the numbers I was quoting. For example, the $37,000 that Willowbrook, the village of Willowbrook received, that was based on total tax collected of $224,000 and total revenue amount wagered, $9 million.
Well, I had 3 restaurateurs that were supposed to be here tonight, and unfortunately, they did not show up, and I don't know why. But the Porterhouse alone asked to leave Burbridge and wanted to be annexed into Willowbrook so that they could compete with Madison, Chicken Basket, and Kerry Piper, because he's not getting any night business because they're all going to those gaming areas, and he wants to put machines in so he can be competitive. You know, I don't own these businesses, and if this were to pass, I don't expect to get a dime out of it, nor do I want a dime. I'm looking at this on the basis of one thing and one thing only: to improve the cash flow of our village without hurting its reputation. And this village has had its reputation hurt numerous times, and which I don't need. But you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. We are no better than any other village. We're just in a unique spot. People think that's not true. Well, it is true. And if you just pass this and that was in the Tribune, the Sun-Times, and everything else about 3 years ago. How disturbing some of the things came out at Burbridge and the other suburbs around the area, but we were the #1 worst. And I don't want to even bring it up here. But please don't just shut it off. Really look at it, because it's really not going to hurt us in the long run. It's going to benefit us. And we lost Global, which was a good revenue maker for the village. What's going to happen with Amazon is you're going to slowly see these retail stores disappear, and you're going to see more restaurants, more doctors, more dentists, more whatever service things are going to be, because retail is dying. And you see it in Darien, you see it everywhere. It's slowly going to happen here. Please be careful what you do.
This is an interesting.
Okay, before I open up the,
Would you tell them what I just said?
You're doing a great job
Was I wrong in what I said?
No, you were absolutely right.
Because think I'm making up stories.
excuse me, can I have an order in the court, or order in the boardroom, please? Thank you. This is really not an open discussion. This is a board meeting, please. We're going to ask for audience participation in a moment. I just ask you to please be quiet. Now, are there any comments on the board first before I ask for anyone from the audience who would like to address the board? Okay. Now, by showing of hands, who here would like to address this topic? Raise your hand. Okay, we have one person. One person only. Okay. Yes, please. Come.
Ellen Raymond again. I want to thank Trustee Francis for mentioning the residents, because that's why I came. I do appreciate the hardship to the business, being that we're next to Indian Head Park and Countryside and some of the other neighboring villages. But the residents should have, I think, more say even than the few businesses that are asking for this. And I didn't know about the Riverside election. That's even more of a landslide. But in the recent primary in West Chicago, they voted down the video gaming by 70%. And this issue came up before the DuPage County Board again, because they've banned, I think we do take a lot of direction, possibly the DuPage side at least, from that board. They had originally banned the video gaming when the law was changed in Illinois, and then the issue came up again last summer, because this article is dated June of 17. And the question came up, as I would ask you all, what's changed? You know, why are we talking about it again? So after many hours of hearing, our former mayor, Gary Grasso, who's on that board, said for now this issue is dead. So I imagine you can get a lot of data from that board, because they thoroughly investigated again. Obviously there's revenue advantages, but there's also many disadvantages, which they found outweighed the revenue advantages. There's also, I don't know, he was saying we're not such an upscale community, but I've always felt that we were. And as of last year at least, this was banned in Clarendon Hills, Downers Grove, Hinsdale, Elmhurst, Glen Ellen, Lombard, about another 10 communities in DuPage County. And I do believe the circumstances in Indian Head Park are financially very different. I was a resident there a very long time. And they don't have a commercial base that you have or warehouses. I mean, there was even talk when I lived there of incorporating into another community. So I think their decision to get that, I think you said 55,000 of revenue from the gaming, was a painful decision, but probably in that case might have saved the village from even having to incorporate into another village. So their circumstances are a little more dire than here. So I just hope you do come to the residents and ask. I've heard a few comments against it. I know somebody I know sent an email against it. There are a lot of disadvantages to the residents that maybe outweigh the few businesses that think it's an advantage.
Thank you, Ellen. Do any other residents who would like to address the board at this time on this topic? Okay, seeing no one, the topic is now back to the board. Trustee Model.
Well, I appreciate what was said, but I think the other thing that residents really are against are tax increases and water rate increases. And you know, you heard the way I voted earlier. I'm not a fan of them either, and especially not until all other options are exhausted. And I've spoke about this at previous board meetings that I am a fan of broadening the revenue base, finding new ways to collect revenue before we go to tax increases to the residents. So I would say that the same residents that would speak out against this are probably the same people who would come and say, don't raise my taxes and don't raise my rates. And the village of Burr Ridge is no different than any other community. We have budget pressures, and we will have budget pressures, and it is difficult to balance a budget. And so I'm a fan of looking at options. Again, you know, we've had some good discussion here. Do we need a motion to let the staff keep researching things, or just general direction from the board, I guess is my question to conclude.
Either way, it doesn't, we need direction, it doesn't have to be a motion.
Trustee Mattel?
I think Burridge is a very special place, and we do need to research our options. I do agree with Trustee Model that we do have bills to pay as a village, but we also want to make sure that we only entertain businesses which keep Burridge's reputation as it is, and keeps the residents happy too. So I think resident input would be welcome before we go with a business like this. And I think if the village does their due diligence, then we should have more options, and we can look at neighboring villages and see if we have other options which might be more suitable. Mm-hmm. And a good ban video gambling and provide equivalent revenue or more revenue.
Anyone else? Trustee Schiappa?
So Doug, can you do some more research on some of the benefits and
Sure, absolutely.
potential detriments? I don't know if Chief Madden had any comments. Okay, all right, because I'm sure he comes into play with something like this coming into the village, so.
I think the trustees on that side pretty much laid out the direction, what staff should do. From Trustee Reveza, Model, and they all gave the good direction. Follow through, get us the information.
Will do.
And if they were to ask for more information, would it be then back on considerations next time?
2 weeks or 4 weeks. I want to make sure we have plenty of time and get all the information you want. So, and then we would notify the restaurants who made the inquiries and keep them informed so they know when this will be back on the agenda.
Yeah, if they want it, they need to be here to represent their opinion, because probably a lot of residents are likely to be against it. So we need to hear a compelling case from the businesses who really want it.
How would we notify the residents?
We could post something on our website.
Notify the homeowners associations?
Yeah.
And rent out the Marriott.
I'm sorry?
and rent out the Marriott.
So be it.
Expect a big meeting.
But, no.
And also, what, I mean, I'm, for one thing, I can't imagine any scenario in which this would be an attractive option for the village. However, it's not up to me. But ultimately, the residents should decide. What are the steps necessary for that to happen?
Well, you could direct staff to prepare an advisory referendum, and we would draft that language. And then you'd approve, I'm not sure if it's a resolution or an ordinance, but you'd approve putting that specific language on the ballot, and it could go on the next available general election, which is November, right? Yeah. Or you could wait till next March's election. That'd be up to you.
I'm not in favor of that option. I think you're going to spend a lot of time on it, and I think, if you put it to a referendum, it's going to fail, I suspect. I think that, the village residents elected us to make decisions on behalf of them, and, they speak at their election when we are elected again on those issues, But, so I don't think that's the best way to get to the root of this. I think you should have the hearings, let the residents speak, let the businesses speak, and let's look at the numbers and make the decisions that we've been elected to make.
Unfortunately not. Sorry, it was back to the board. I'd love for that, but go ahead.
Doug, you said it needed 2 to 4 weeks, 6 weeks, I mean, something thorough. There's no hurry.
There's
we don't
no rush.
rush.
Make sure you allow yourself enough time.
Well,
Enough
then,
time.
let's just say 4 weeks from now.
4 weeks?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And with that,
By the
Just to be sure.
restaurant owners and the residents and such? Okay, thank you.
and based on,
Is it worthwhile notifying adjacent business owners?
Check with the hotels too.
Right, that makes sense.
Sorry.
Is it worthwhile notifying adjacent business owners to a restaurant that's considering this? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
someone want to mention something over here? I thought I saw someone hand raised. Okay. I don't have any motions on the table right now. Are there any motions?
For what?
To direct staff.
All we had to do is make a direction.
You don't need a motion. You
You
can if you want, but if someone wants
No,
to make a motion, it's
we
fine.
gave him
It's
4
not
weeks. He
necessary.
said he's gonna get him more information and come back in 4 weeks.
I'd like to have a vote on that.
I move we direct staff to further investigate the concept of video gambling in the village of Burr Ridge.
Second.
In a time period, minimum of 4 weeks,
I have something on the agenda. in
4 to 6 weeks, whatever.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. We're up to M. I've received and filed draft resignation letter from Village Treasurer Noel Hasslis, effective April 9th, 2018. Trustee Francis.
Yes, I think someone like the village treasurer, Stalis, has served since 1992 as our village treasurer for over 26 years. A word of thanks from all of us. We appreciate that. All of us dedicated service to the village. And also to Plan Commissioner Greg Scott, his dedicated 5 years of service serving the Plan Commission. These are volunteers. These are people that take their valuable time from their busy lives and come to help the village make it a very special place. So I would ask that in the future we have dedicated volunteers that move on from their position in the village, that we recognize them out loud as opposed to putting it on the consent agenda. I think we talked about this once before, Doug.
Right.
So
Okay.
I want to thank both of them for their service to the village.
Anyone else?
I echo Trustee Francis' comments.
Yeah, and in particular, I'd like to thank Greg Scott, Commissioner Greg Scott. He was on the Plan Commission for almost 5 years and has a brought a rich real estate background to the commission, and just stellar service. It was certainly appreciated by everybody on the village board and the village. I also like to give it also as an opportunity to ask for, to let everyone know that we're looking for a planning commissioner to replace him, and also an alternate. So anyone who does not have an application on file at the village hall, I highly recommend that you do so. Now, do I have a motion to approve both M and N for both resignation letters?
So moved.
First and second, and roll call, please.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Scampa?
Yes.
Trustee Mitchell?
Yes.
Trustee Paveza?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
6-0.
Motion passes 6-0. Residents' comments, other consideration for announcements, deliberation, and or discussion? Residents' comments, any additional residents like to address the board? Reports and communications of village officials? Non-residents like to address the board?
I do not live in Burr Ridge, but I do live in the 82nd District for the House of Representatives.
Your name, please.
And my name is Rick Lightheart, and I just want to say thank you to the board of Burr Ridge, but particularly thank you to Mickey Straub for running against Jim Durkin. I had the pleasure of working and knocked on a lot of doors. I never thought the evil that I saw in running for an office like this was as bad as it was. And I'm very sorely disappointed with my leadership in Illinois for the Republican Party and the Democrats. I'm just so saddened to see what I've seen and what I've been through in supporting Mickey for this office. And I saw the videotapes. I believe you were on the tape, and I saw everything. And I'm just so disappointed to see my state, of which I've been here 65 years, go where it's going. And I'm very disappointed, but I'm very pleased for the village of Burr Ridge, and certainly for Mickey, that finally somebody stood up to run against somebody and did it in an integrity way. And I just would encourage you, board members, to encourage other people to stand up like that. I know it takes courage to do something like that. It's not so easy. So thank you, Burr Ridge, and thank you, Mickey, for stepping out and taking a shot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other non-residents like to address the board this time? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Scampa?
Yes.
Trustee Mitchell?
Yes.
Trustee Paveza?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
6-0.